Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last episode of Star Citizen Live from the void, from my home, hopefully forever, dear everything. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week and we hang out, we chat. We ask some questions. We learn about our guests. We learn about their work. And this week's guest is a gentleman who's very near and dear to my heart. Probably has no idea how much so, but mostly I just like saying his name. Like I just walk around randomly and I just like saying his name. It's AI director, Mr. Francesco Roccucci. Francesco, how you doing?
Hi, all good, thanks. It's a really great pleasure to be here with you.
I appreciate that. We'll see if you still feel the same way by the end of the hour.
Well, it's not the first time that we are together, so it's like, I know the feeling, I know the feeling.
Yes, it's not the first time you've been on the show, but this is the first time we're going to dive deep into what makes Roccucci tick.
Hmm.
The who, the what, the where, the why. Why, Roccucci, why?
Those are really, very deep questions. Let's see if I can answer.
Yeah. For those of us for those of you anyway, who didn't see last week's show, we are in the CitizenCon pipeline. We are just 8 short days away from CitizenCon 2952 on Saturday, October 8th. Because of that and the big push towards 318 and PES and a bunch of people on Squadron like they've been for all year and stuff like this, we are relaxing. We are putting our feet up, and we're having a couple personal shows, a couple shows where we get to know some folks. If you remember the old Meet the Dev series from way back in 2015, something like that, but more longer form. If you have the big questions like when's this come out and when's that come out and why isn't this like this? Well, this probably isn't the show for you. So just giving you that warning now, so you don't complain later. Instead, we're gonna learn all about Roccucci, who he is, stuff like that. So let's start things off. Every show is somebody's first. While you've done this show several times and whatnot, there are folks who are no doubt watching right now who have no idea who the heck you are. So let's start there. Who are you, and what do you do for Star Citizen?
So I'm Francesco Roccucci, as you said. I'm the director in Imperium Games. I started in the company in 2015, it was February. So it's quite a while I'm here, and I'm basically responsible for all the high fidelity AI. So everything that you see, how they behave, what they do, what should do, which systems do we use, on the servers. This is what I'm responsible for, and with my teams. Right now, the I team is structured into 3 major teams. I mean, as people can also see from the monthly reports, we are kind of 4 now. We have a little bit, extra help from the vehicle team. So basically, we have the iTech team, the feature team, the iContent team, and the vehicle AI team. That is like, there are some people in the vehicle team that start to do a bit of AI work. Diego, hi, yeah, listening.
Is Diego in chat? Hello, Diego.
Yeah. And so the iCore tech team basically is supposed to empower the other teams with technology, to fulfill the features that the projects need. The AI feature team, is supposed to take this technology and apply it to multiple features that are requested by the requirements of the different games, the Star Citizen and Squadron. And then the content team is mostly made by designers and animators. So what is meant to be is to take all these technologies features and build a lot of content. So yeah, this is like all the people that they either report directly to me, or I support and overview and try to help as much as possible.
And I'm gonna go full screen on this. What's on the back? What's on the whiteboard?
So everybody's having fun of this whiteboard because I love writing on the whiteboard, right? So it's like there is a little bit of stuff that I used to explain things. So we have this room now, and we lots of people come and we talk about stuff. I like to draw to help myself with drawing. So even when we do meetings right now, I try to move the board next to the camera, and then I draw stuff. So there is some usable stuff like use channel definition. We are trying to simplify a little bit some of the verbs we use in the actions that I can perform in the world, so that we can unify a little bit better and make it a little bit more consistent. Some of the things that we have. There's some high level explanation of subsumption data works and subsumption, low level core logic works, how we instantiate runtime data, static data on the different behaviors and mission logic. And then there is some more, on the right side, there are some of the actions of the spaceships, that we want to do, some of the setup of the usables like counters, chairs. Yeah, a little bit of everything,
You said subsumption, and you mentioned the monthly report. So we're one last question before we take a step back to your early days here. Folks who follow the monthly reports and stuff, it's probably where they get the most AI updates in general about the state of this and state of that. Squadron 42 AI and the Persistent Universe AI. In 5 minutes or less, what is subsumption?
So basically, Tony
We'll go get a
Zurek. Yeah, that's good. So I can talk for the next hour. So when I basically joined the company, right, Tony had this speech for this architecture of AI, where there is a little bit of separation between what we want to do at high fidelity, what we want to do in a simulation state, and so on and so on. And subsumption is the name he gave to this architecture. What actually turns, in reality to be is a combination of stuff. When we say subsumption, I think is always like very, very broad, because it contains both something that, in regular AI development you would call, for example, behavior trees or activities or behaviors from the actor perspective, the AI agents. And then we also include stuff like missions logic. So I think we can talk about what is an eye level and an architecture level and what it is like on implementation side, right? So I think what subsumption wants to model the world in a way in which it becomes believable and, realistic. How you do that is with a combination of things, because in reality, when you do game development, especially, the eye is a very big chunk of the experience that you have, but also it's not something you can see in isolation, right? AI is the output of the work that all the teams do, and there is a really large multidisciplinary effort into making AI looking good, right? People sometimes think too much, there's a bit of magic, there's a behavior running, and then that's it. But like AI is, first of all, a lot of animations, because animations is the way in which we convey what actually is happening behind the scene. The same is voice, what they say. Reality, right? Like the smartness of people, and why we consider ourselves smart is because we can express our thoughts. And how do we do that? With the language, with especially with the language, that is a construct that we make, right, to express feelings and ideas. And the eye, in a way, needs to model this concept, but also make sure that whoever experienced that understands what they're doing. Because my classic example is like you might have combat AI that is great and is moving behind covers. You don't even see it. It pops behind you and it kills you. The feeling you have is that they're cheating, even if they're not cheating, right? Because it's not fun to play against that. So I think we always have to balance between, having the right tools to describe what the eye does, what the word does, what the eye is supposed to do, and then making sure that what we describe translates into something that the players can actually perceive as smart, but also fun and also understandable, right? So subsumption is basically, the architecture that tries to achieve this one from multiple directions, and it tries to expose this sort of language to multiple departments in a way in which they can really perform their duties, basically.
2 follow-ups. One, anytime a player is killed by AI, it's absolutely cheating, and you should just come out with it. You should just be honest about it.
We have to, that's what I say when I die and I play games, right?
It obviously can see through walls, and
Of course, it's not me being bad. Absolutely, like I'm usually really good.
I'm bad when I die from every other
I
player in the real world.
of
But if I get
course.
beat by an AI, it
So
has to be
there are two
cheating.
things. Yeah, but the reality is also that sometimes yes, the AI cheats, right? But I think our approach is usually really to never cheat. Like the cheat that we do might be more stuff like, are you really perceiving the guy that is, in this suit, or do we read that data, right? Stuff that is more like the cheats for me are more things that simplify the CPU usage, right? And they need to you cheat compared to how the real world senses might function, but not in terms of what you should know about the world, right? What you should know about the world should always be fair for the players,
Yeah,
and then of course,
yeah. The I had a second follow up, but I want to touch on something you said. You mentioned the CPU cycles and stuff, and cheating and whatnot. It's one of the hardest elements of balance. Just combat AI. mean, obviously, there's many kinds of AI. There's not just combat AI. There's also bartenders. Lots
absolutely.
and lots of bartenders. So many bartenders.
I spoke so much
So
about
many
that.
segments. So many stories about bartenders. Sorry,
I have a
I was
class from the
remembering something.
bartender.
Um, but the I lost my train of thought. But you mentioned the CPU cycles and stuff. One of the things that I've seen, there are two things I think I always knew, but I didn't really understand. I didn't really know that I knew them instinctively. Somewhere down playing video games my entire life, I knew this,
Mhm.
but it didn't really come into crystallization until I came here. And one of them is how much balance in combat AI is linked to server performance.
Mhm.
I have seen like early tests of Siege of Wars and whatnot where the AI is just Robert Patrick T-1000 Terminators and just going out and murdering everything, and then that exact same AI gets put on gets put on servers and whatnot, and then 50 players jump in, or 70 players at the time when the test and whatever, and the server tick rate comes down, and that same AI that was so devastating in just playing on a local machine or a local server that's 6 inches away from your gameplay machine is now like a Three Stooges routine.
Mhm.
It's like pull your head out of your butt. It's like it's all the programming and all the effort and all the time and the artistry of your team and your programmers to create these varying levels, and then to put them on servers that are under strain, that need things like
Mhm.
server meshing and a number of other performance improvements. Uh, I don't know. I don't really even remember where I was going with the question. It was that disparity between the work that you guys can do to refine and perfect a thing, and then have it all go to hell with a bad server performance, was just again, it's a thing I think I knew, but I didn't really appreciate until I came here.
Yeah, I think basically, well, our game is particularly unique on some of these things, right? For different reasons. One is, I think right now in the last weeks, there's been a lot of discussion in the industry about, game in development, and how things actually look behind the scenes of a game. Like I think we have this special position where we actually show a lot of the game that is still in development, right? Because we are still in an alpha stage. What that means is that usually in a development, right, you pick your battles based on where you want to be, not just where you are, right? So right now, for example, you have a certain like things that you're gonna change is the time, right, that you have and the resources that you have, and you need to try to balance, which type of task you want to take. So let's say we want to have a combat AI, you need to have a specific set of features there and a specific set of functionalities for designers, for example, to balance the game, right? Balancing means how accurate they are, how often did they shoot, which type of tactics should they play, where should they be, and so on and so on. Now that one, as you say, needs to use a specific set of CPU cycles to do some of this calculation. And you need to distribute this calculation because the more you do in one frame, the more the frame costs, right? You have a very quicker response time from the AI because everything is done in that server. But if this frame rate goes down, then it means you have less, more latency on how the player can react to that, and so on and so on, right? Now, in our multiplayer world, of course, we have two parts. That is that you want to have a very high frame rate on the clients. I want to have a high frame rate on the server as well, because of course the player might see a word that's 60 frames per second, and then the server might run at 3 frames per second for different reason, or 10 frames per second, or 15 frames per second. You have a really wide range of CPU usage, right, on the server. So for example, Zero Horizon, I think one big focus for us was trying to optimize that usage overall, not just on the eye, because of course, using a lot of CPU cycles for anything would impact the eye, but not only, right? It might impact the elevator that comes, might impact, physics calculation, anything pretty much. On the eye side, right, once we have games, previous company I worked on, games that I worked on, we had like very single player games. Usually you have a very strong control on how many characters you want to enable, right? So maybe you have 20 enemies active at the same time, and those use certain things. Siege of Horizon, we had peaks of 2,000, right? And it's like 2,000 NPCs are not that simple. Like 2,000 NPC that might fight players, not just like background NPCs or stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
Now, can you be smarter on that side? Absolutely. Is it something we want to support long run? That's sometimes the question we need to answer. Like, are we expecting to have one server with 5,000 NPC active at the same time? As you mentioned, we are working towards server mesh. So then the decision comes towards, do we want to invest time right now to make sure that we can run 5,000 NPC on a server, or are we expecting that we have 1,000 NPC on each server at maximum, right? Eventually, with a certain, a lot of servers. 500 NPC, you need to decide those type of budgets. Are we expecting to have a population manager that is smart and decides, well, there should be 20 NPC here and only one there because nobody's around there? Should they come out of spawn closet, right? These are all pieces that are coming together right now. But once you don't have them, sometimes you either need to say like, well, I accept that, unfortunately, we are not there yet with the type of experience, or no, I want to invest, 2 months trying to be smart. Like one good thing actually that we discovered, right, it was the vision calculation, right? Because on a really high performance server, you can distribute vision calculation, on different ways that you can consider it either a frequency of update. That means you want to update somebody every second if it's close, or every half second if it's close, in different frequency if they are far. But then or in the amount of ticks, you can decide, right? So we had like something exposed also from, our core systems that could say like, I want to update every 30 updates, but 30 updates on 3 frames per second is different than 30 updates at 30 frames per second. So we switch a lot to frequency. But even in that case, even frequency means that if you want to do an update two updates every second for 100 NPC that are around you, right? It's a lot of updates in that frame. That means that if you have already a frame that is low, it would be just lower and lower, right? Yeah. So I think it's a lot of balancing there.
Yeah. You said 2,000 NPCs. That's spawned throughout the entire server. And stuff. In the early versions of in the first versions of Siege of Origin that I saw, and everything, the event alone was spawning 700 to 800 NPCs. Yes. And that was one of the great things about that event. It wasn't just designed to create new content for the players. It was designed to push, to push on all the seams of Star Citizen, and to see where we can get. We got the 100-player servers because of the research that was necessary of pushing on that stuff. We got all these other improvements, but yeah, I think in the end, the version that went live, it still spawns 400 or so NPCs during the course of the entire event, which is a massive fucking. Oh, there's my one. Sorry, everybody.
But in the meantime, people can also be somewhere else, like where they activate other locations, and there are other NPC or other missions, right? That can still run on the same server. So it's a lot.
I'm getting faster at catching them.
That's good. Sometimes they come out,
That's when I get. That's why I try to be so even keeled, because when I get excited about something, that's when the language starts changing. That's why everybody's like, Jared, why are you never hype? It's like, because that's how I control my language. When I get hyped, the language disappears. Um, but yeah, and just to roll back a little bit, we're not sitting here. I wasn't saying, you're not saying that the AI is perfect and the AI is done, and as soon as the servers get better, everything will be fixed. You guys still have a healthy road ahead of you with the work to be done.
Absolutely.
This is the current state of AI is a shared state between the work that your guys still need to do, still need to push, still need to develop, and then the performance and the server and stuff coming into a lot, that will continue to allow you to push and develop that stuff. So it's not
But
like,
it's also, I think, yeah, for us, I think the funny or the enjoyable part of our job is also that pretty much you can continue to push it forever. Like, you might never be happy with the state in which you are, right? I think, like, for example, perception, we could work on making it faster for a really long time.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's iteration, right? So we try to, for example, I think I'm really happy already of the stuff that went in Siege of Horizon. That it means that it's still, like, it's not, as you said, it's not that I consider it done. I consider it way far to be done, but it was a really good and nice step towards a lot of improvements that we put in. And it's I think you need to be also proud of the iterations, right? Usually people would see the final game, and now they see a lot of these iterations. If you look one after the other, sometimes they don't feel a lot, but I think it's also great when you see, even from the community, some comparison from how it was 1.5 to 3A, 3.17, and I think there's been really a lot of jumps of the game.
Yeah. Sorry, somebody in the chat said every time Jared swears the Starliner gets pushed back a year, and my brain went, no! And I got distracted. The other big surprise, and something you said touched on this for me, was how much of AI is animation driven. Like how much of a believable and authentic AI, an immersive AI, an AI that doesn't just stand out and look like trash, is based in its animations and its ability to quickly and dynamically pick between a huge array of animations and then blend them as seamlessly as possible. You mentioned this earlier. Talk to me about how important is animation in AI, and do you and Steve Bender just hate each other yet, or?
No, me and Steve are great, because I think we also used to work together. I mean, in Crisis we worked together already, Crisis 3, and animation is, like, a fundamental part. Like, again, like animation and communication, like, dialogues, like those are what really makes AI standing out. I mean, for me, like, right, there's a lot of example of good AI. One classic one is, of course, Fear, where if you think about how they implement it, it's not even like, the technology itself doesn't have to be rocket science sometimes to give you the feeling that those things are very smart, right? There was a lot of really smart crafting of the environment, or really smart, setup of the level designers. So this is why I was saying, like, the AI is the product of the collaboration of lots of departments. And to make it look good and make it look believable, I think, what we work a lot with Steve, for example, is that he is the person in charge of all this look. So whenever we do, previews, and, we always work on iteration and white box phases and keyframe animation, where they first need to, what we work a lot is try to iterate through the gameplay, because one thing is looking good. One thing is looking good for the gameplay, because we're not making a movie, right? Only. So I think sometimes you might create an animation that looks perfect, but then when you play, the player plays in a way in which you don't even see it, or it's not reacting correctly, as you say, right? It doesn't, you cannot blend correctly, or you cannot transition from one place to another. The reactions is a really important, scenario where you need to have a balance between the amount of animation you want to create to get the believability, but also structuring them in a way in which it's easier to transition from one to another, that the categories that you want to play, make sense for what you're trying to communicate to the player. And use different type of techniques that we have. So I think basically, for example, the behaviors for my take, the way I grew up my career or grew up my skills in my career, is that the behaviors is critical, is the central part for the AI to describe the decision flow. Decision flow then needs to go into making sure that the decision flow goes into what the animation director wants to show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think we have this. I think it always seems so very complicated when we talk about stuff, but really this complexity, like you're trying to solve a complex problem, complexity needs to be somewhere. And I think the critical bit is making sure that the complex part are distributed over the ownership of different department, right? So for example, an animation director describes the flow, describes the animation state machine that you want to create, how to transition from one state into another, what is allowed to be done. And then the decision flow needs to explain what the AI wants to do without, tidying those two things up too much, because you want to have, these things flowing nicely. And so me and Steve work a lot together. He's fantastic animation director. I mean, his experience is absolutely great for us. Even just all the things we always discuss and we always want to push. So, hi Steve.
Hi Steve. Skijoder? I don't know. In chat says, "Is this pre-recorded?" That part was, but we just switched to live right now, so I could answer the question. Now we're gonna switch back to pre-recorded. It's a mix. So you talked about your career. You mentioned your career a lot. Then let's talk about this. You could do anything in the world. The world is your oyster. You can go and you can do any career in the world. Why in the world work in video games?
So for me, it's been, I consider myself super lucky because I always dreamt to do this thing. And, I eventually, I've been lucky enough to manage to get it. Of course, it's not just luck, it's a lot of, effort you need to put and a lot of energy, blood, and tear, but you also in life you always need to be like to find yourself in the right position, in the right moment. But basically I think like when my dad bought Commodore 64, basically, right?
Nice.
Well, I think it started a little bit earlier. Like I was at my cousin's place and he had like a video back. There was kind of a Philips, very popular in Italy at that time, a little console, and that is where I still remember what I was probably 4. But I still remember nowadays that feeling of looking at the screen and having this job that was moving stuff on the screen. I was like, wow, this is fantastic, right? And then my cousin got a Commodore 64. I got a Commodore 64, and I started to program, and I just started to mimic him pretty much because I loved it to do that. And that's where I started to program. Right, that was probably 7. Yep. And at that moment, there was no real, like in Italy especially, it was not so much about artificial intelligence per se. But, for me, like there were people talking about it, right? But there was no computer science, studies. It was like electronic engineer. So for me, I was always saying like, I want to study to become, an electronic engineer and do video games, right?
Do you have those
spiral? And that's where I started.
Do you have those little magazines that had basic programs that you could type yourself? I started on a VIC 20.
Never working, right? And they were never working.
I started on a VIC 20, went into a Commodore 64, so we're right there around the same time. And
absolutely.
And like the earliest photo I have, the earliest photo I have is a baby. And then the next photo up is me on a VIC 20, learning to read and write by just match the symbols, match that, and type. Like that's where my dad put me. He was convinced computers would be the future. He was right. I went a slightly different way, but yeah. So all right, Commodore 64. You've started programming, but again, things happen. Junior high, high school, girls, boys, whatever. Lots of distractions out there. how'd you get into video games?
I was quite nerd, right? So it's like, in general, it's like, yes, I did like my high school was math-based high school. I started to do computer science engineering in Italy. Like you have this a little bit of difference between pure computer science that is part of the science flow, let's say, where you have mathematics, physics, and then you have engineering informatics, that is like, yeah, the computer science part of engineering. So I did that one because there was more specialization about artificial intelligence. That is what I wanted to do already at the time. And I had the opportunity to basically, when I started to do my master thesis in Rome and La Sapienza, to also have really good mentors. One is also here working with us, is Andrea. They taught me a lot about, coding about C++. And in that lab, we were doing a lot of robotics as well. And, with our professor, we did really, it was really exciting, right? And, there was two main, classes at that time. That was also with Andrea. It was like, the assistant of the teacher at that time. And we
You're
were
saying,
doing,
I'm sorry,
learning and
you and Andreas go all the way back to high school?
yeah, absolutely from university,
Okay, okay.
university time, yeah,
Still
university time.
impressive, but
Yeah. It's quite a long time. And I think like, he has a super strong background on lots of stuff. This is why, I'm super happy to have him on board because like his skills and knowledge about, AI, not just about, what we do, but even things that we might want to do in the future, right? And more research topics as well. But yeah, basically we did like a lot of classes about, learning, about, vision, and, we applied to robotics and stuff like this. And once I graduated, I started applying to lots of games, video games company. And I was hoping to start with an internship or something like this. And then I got an offer in Rome first for a company that was making software for satellites. So I started there. And, you didn't get a lot of answers from video games companies. I was like, okay, I mean, this is still pretty interesting. And I started there, with C++ code. So it was something that I still wanted to do. And then after my first week there, I basically got an offer I got an interview with EA for an internship here in Germany, a country that I pretty much didn't know anything about, at that time. But my wife, at that time girlfriend, she was studying US for 6 months in New York City. So she was doing like her thesis in the Columbia University. And at that time I was like, it kind of seems like it's a good opportunity. It's like, we're far anyway. I can do 6 months as internship in Germany, and then we both come back to Italy, and I find a game company in Italy. And I was working in EA Phenomic. I was an internship for this game was called Battleforge. Was a RTS game based with cards. So it was one of the first EA game that was based on trying collecting cards, but the cards were used to kind of summon enemies in an RTS world, and then you would just use it as a RTS, actual, real time strategy game. So it was a bit, double things that you summon your units through cards, but then you actually use them. And after that, I basically moved to Crytek. I got an offer from Crytek. I started to work for the engine licensing. So I was, hired as an AI engineer for the engine licensing. But I think the good thing there was also that the team was not super big. So I had to learn a lot of the stuff for the engine in general. And I had the opportunity to work with, a lot of really, really, really talented people. Hi, Karsten. Hi, Rain.
I don't think Karsten watches the show.
I know, but
I don't think Karsten
watch it
knows who I am half the time.
It could be.
I've only talked to Karsten like 4 or 5 times, and each time I get the impression he's wondering who I am. And what
Marco, Marco is like he's been one of my major mentor, in Crytek as well. And
Marco knows who I am because he runs. He turns around and goes the other direction anytime he sees me coming around a corner. So Marco knows who I am.
And I had the opportunity to learn a lot of stuff, like not just about AI, but also, I do, recognize like that the big chunk of my knowledge comes also from learning about other systems, because I think having the larger overview how things work, I think is really powerful sometimes. And despite the beginning was like, but I want to do this other thing, it's like, now I need to fix all this other stuff. But it was really powerful in terms of knowledge, right? And this I think is very classic in the career where you start as a junior or as an intern, right? Sometimes you're like, oh, but I need to really fix this bug, and you don't really. Similar to when you study, you say, why do I need to study a dot product? When is this gonna ever be useful, right? And then you say, oh, that's where it was gonna be useful, right?
So,
And stuff like this.
so you're in the game industry now. You've worked for a couple companies. You found a place at Crytek with people you're liking and stuff like this. Programmers, there's many disciplines for programmers, for engineers in video games. How do you end up in AI? Well,
So I always wanted to do AI basically because I did like I come my background as well outside the gaming is about I always played role playing games,
yeah.
right? And for me, the acting, right? The AI is a lot about acting, right? It's a lot like, well, we are in this world, action, right? And the guy is like, oh yeah, hey man, how you doing? Right? Stuff like this. So it's a lot about telling a story. And role-playing game is a lot about playing a story or telling a story. It depends what, if you're a player or if you are the master, dungeon master in that case. I mean, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I love like, a lot of the fantasy settings. I did like LARP, I did like a lot of nerd stuff. That I loved it, and I still want. These are my fondest memory. And I started playing role-playing games. Actually, this is the funny connection with Germany. So my first role-playing game I played was The Dark Eye. That is a very popular German game because it's a bit simpler than D&D, and in Italy it was getting a bit more popular at that time. And I was probably 9, 10. I was at elementary school with my best friends. And my best friends also had really a nice shared love for those passion for those things, right? So I think AI has always been related to me in a way in which for video games is the closest to the tools that you have to tell a story and to make people escape reality into a world that tells the story that they like, right? And this is why I've always been fascinated by that. I've always been attracted by that. So it's yeah, it's the way that I have for using my skill to tell stories to people, right? And make people live in a different world.
Uh, sorry, Raytango TV. What are you talking about? You're projecting or something. I don't know what's going on. It's interesting. I'm noting a couple parallels between our paths. Starting with early basic programming on the C64 and stuff like this. Going to an academically driven high school. Being very nerdy. That's where we diverge because you obviously excelled in your studies and went to university and everything. I was counterculture, rebelled against my academic high school. I literally my high school transcripts are failed in summer school and failed in summer school because I refused to do the work. I was grunge and Nirvana and not wanting to do anything. My school had a terrible sports team, and it was all very academically focused. And so I didn't want to do the academics because I was just very wanting to be contentious and contrary, and I didn't want to do the sports because they sucked and I have asthma. So I went and created like a drama club and did that.
But you see, the drama club, I think also is another things that we have a little bit in common because in high school I also did a little bit of, I mean, not drama, but I did a bit of theater,
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Name one play. One play you did in high school.
No, they were plays written by some of the teachers there that they
Oh.
were recalling, so it was they were not like full, real play. So it was a bit of a nerdy, strange approach to theater, right? But I had fun, but it was more close to role playing than actually doing theater in that case.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
how was your drama class? So your drama.
we were doing like Arthur Miller's The Crucible and being dark commentary on the Salem witch trials and just Dark of the Moon and Children of the Heart, and just really dark melodramatic stuff. And then finally the last show before I graduated, Annie, Little Orphan Annie, where I shaved my head for the first time and was Daddy Warbucks. So
Wow.
Annie,
So
your first night
are there
here.
videos? Are there videos of all of this, Jared?
No,
Can you
no, no.
share?
There's almost
Ah,
no video evidence of me before I was like
okay,
25, which is
okay,
so
okay.
weird to me about my life these days because now there's just more video evidence than anything. But there's very little. We didn't have my family didn't have camcorders and stuff like that.
Or
It's
maybe the
the
school, maybe the school had it at that time.
now theater on camera looks bad.
Oh
You
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
every handheld videotaping of a high school play looks 100 times worse than the experience actually was. Now, even if the experience was bad, it's still going to look 100 times worse when you see it on a camcorder, especially 1994 era VHSC cassettes.
Yes.
So, all right, you've made it into the video game industry. You found your calling with AI and your ability to tell stories and stuff like this. You're at Crytek. You're making friends, Karsten, Marco, Andreas, from uni and stuff like this. Talk to me about how you came to CIG.
hmm
How did that work out?
I I think at that time, like basically, I think there was the search of some new challenge for me, right? Something where I think there were some because I think like after during Crisis 3, right, we had like a really nice group as well of my AI colleagues. That, I had like were four AI programmers on Crisis 3. And then after that, I think, I really wanted also to try something different. And I think CIG was a really good place because first of all, there was the common technology, the base technology that it was used at the time. But also I think the project is just, way over the top on almost anything, right? So it's like there's a lot of everything. There is very, a search for the best possible realism that you can achieve and so on and so on.
No shortage of ambition.
Uh, the ambition was really large. So I think for me it was just a very good place where to continue to just grow with my skill, right? Because I think you need to always challenge yourself. And here I feel like, you never challenge yourself enough. There's always like more space to challenge yourself. So I think it's a really good place where I always feel very satisfied of how much I can learn and how much I can improve. And there is a lot of space where I can improve and get better, right?
So was there an AI team in place when you came here? Did you have to build it from the
Uh,
ground up? What do you recall about those
so
early days?
so when I joined, I think a lot of the AI was taken care through our middleware at that time that we're using, when we're using Kythera as a middleware.
Right, Kythera.
Uh,
Oh wow,
Yeah,
I remember.
but then I think we moved into deciding that we wanted to have more in-house development, right? So yes, then I built a team pretty much from scratch, where Marius and Andrea have been the two first team members, on the tech side, and Janine was our producer since pretty much the beginning, and then the team grew up from there. So we were like, we started with three people pretty much, and we started to work a lot close with Tony, right? When we started to move a lot more development internally, where we decided to really push for subsumption at that time, right? And then me and Tony pretty much started to crack on implementing all these things where he made a lot of the external tool for the subsumption editing, right? This C sharp tool that we used, and we use for a lot of stuff. And I basically pretty much wrote all the runtime code, all the level code of how the graph gets executed, the roads, runs, all the tasks, and so on and so on. Together also with Mars and Andrea. Andrea is with his background, he took care of a lot of the shape stuff, especially the 3D. I mean, we have all this really unique approach to 3D pathfinding and 3D, movement that Andrea is has worked on. Marius has supported me on all the navigation stuff since the day he arrived pretty much, and I think that has been the foundation of the team. And right now, I think we are super lucky because I think the people we have on board that are fantastic. Yeah, we have some new juniors that started a few months ago. They're doing like super awesome. Like they're really really fantastic. So I'm really excited because I think people will see more and more improvements because I think how the team has been growing and now the type of culture we are trying to push. That is a culture where everybody helps each other, especially, and everybody tries to share as much as possible, the knowledge that he has. We still try to keep, people responsible for specific areas because in general developers loves to have, their own expertise in, grow in a specific way because otherwise you can never be super good at something, right? But I think all our stuff is very shared. He pushes for knowledge sharing, but also sharing, the usage of the system so that everybody, the more you use it, right, and the more people feel responsible to work on common stuff. And yeah, it's we build it from pretty much the base, from zero to right now we are, me, Mars, Andrea. We have two tools programmer in the core team that is like Michael Madsen. We have, Fadi that just joined us as an intern tools programmer. We have Alex. We have Daniel in UK as well that just joined a few months ago. It's fantastic. We have Jake. We have, Jacob, Wout. We have Andrew. They're all fantastic programmers. I hope I didn't forget anybody. I don't think so, but we have really, really great.
Yeah, your team's grown since the last time I was able to see him in person. It's hard to keep track over the last 2.5 years with pandemic and work from home. It's if you don't have a reason to get on a call with somebody, you can have no idea they exist anymore. It's not like the old days where you just walk around the office and introduce yourself and say hello. It's like that. As you started, you got the back half of those names. I was like,
I forgot one person. It's Chris that also joined us recently,
how did you forget them?
So now I didn't forget. They're it's great to see like how it's hard to find people to grow a team in a very in a way that it's not disruptive, of course, for different reasons. Not only because like you want to grow in terms of skill, right? You want to give people enough of your time, to grow them into their roles. But also I think it needs to fit, from personality perspective. And I think those guys are fantastic because they fit both ways. They fit on skills, but they fit also on personality. They are super motivated. They're super excited. They're bringing so much to the table, even in terms of, new ideas and new approaches.
So we're almost out of time. We're hitting the end here. There's couple things I didn't realize. You said you started in February 2015. We started almost at the exact same time. I was doing some contract work before late 2014, early 2015, stuff like this. So they don't count my official, full-time employment until like April of 2015. But I'd been here for a while, so we started around the same time.
So I'm older than you in this company.
Well, technically, by HR standards, yes. But by pay stubs, I got pay stubs back in 2014. So
it's data.
Yeah. The Persistent Universe, the first version with Alpha 2.0, launched in December of 2015. So we've been here the entire time Persistent Universe has existed in the PU. We talked a bit about the struggle with the server performance and stuff that hinders this a bit. Obviously, with the development of subsumption, delayed a lot of things. We had to develop the system before we could start building AIs on top of it stuff. The split focus between Squadron 42 and PU has to play some some factor in this. This is my very long-winded way of saying that the AI in the Persistent Universe is, I don't think we're not telling any tales out of school. It's not where anybody wants it to be.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely not where I wanted to be.
Nobody would believe us if we tried to sit here and be like, "Oh yeah, it's great. Just we're almost there and whatever." that's a simple thing, but you're sitting here, you're leading this ship, you're captain of this ship here. Um, how do you think it's going? This is
I
you.
think because I have,
Forget the party line. Forget you're not. To take off the CIG
uh-huh.
badge, whatnot. You know, talk to me
I
as Roccucci. Talk to me
Yeah,
as
the
Roccucci.
problem is I
How do you
know
think it's doing?
I have more, insight on the low level technical thing. I think like what we spend a lot of time on this one, and I think we're spending a lot of time on making sure that some of the things, because AI doesn't grow in a linear way. I think most of the
What
AI,
does in game
like
development?
that's true. That's true.
I'm sorry.
Like it's
Continue.
the classic 80%. You do 80%, and then 20% takes 80% of the time, right? The last 20%. But I think we are still at the point where I think not everything we do is actually visible there. Not everything is yet live, right? Not yet everything is yet there, because maybe you have some behaviors that require some setup, and that setup is not yet there. Or maybe there are some things that we're doing for Squadron that we are not yet, in PU. And there are lots of those improvements. Or maybe there are things that are related to the server mesh. I think AI is in a way is a little bit an unlucky child of development, because it doesn't come up together until the end in a way, right?
Right.
But so I think if you would, whatever game you develop, right, unless it's a sequel of something, you have a very rough experience during the development, right? That is because of animation missing, because system missing, and so on and so on. We are a bit in the middle, where we have like a little bit of animation missing, a little bit of system missing, a
Right.
bit of optimization missing, and you experience all of this. So I think like the way I see it, right, is like, for example, we still have a lot of behaviors, for example, in PO running, that we want to replace. And we are, and it depends on the resources you have allocated to drive that or something else, right? So I'm personally seeing a lot of improvements, right? And I'm really not necessarily frustrated, but also a little bit sad that people can need still to experience some of the bugs and the problems that we have, right? I'm not happy about that, but I think sometimes you cannot immediately see why you need to live with something, right? I think people would be happy anyway when this is out, right? And I think there is a little bit of pain that you need to endure. Now, of course, there could be a discussion that is this too long? No, not too long. Should it be less? But this is hard to say with abstraction. I think it's always, I'm coming from a scientific background. For me, everything is based on data, right? If you don't have the data, it's really hard to decide, like, is this a good decision or is a bad decision? You need to always balance it. Um, but for me, of course, like, I would like to have at least everything, people experiencing, what at least at the level in which the servers are when they're fresh and you have a good experience, right? Because I think, majority of the players also are starting to enjoy that type of experience, despite, a lot of the things, still missing. But for example, stuff like, once we release the reinforcement, right, you see a little bit of things that we are doing that is raising PU. And I think, yes, you have to just the regular fixing as any development has. The fortunately is that, when you release in our environment, you didn't have that 6-8 months of only bug fixing that usually a development has, of something that is locked, because we are really impacted by a lot of the change that happens, because let's say, persistent streaming, you come in and that one in a way or another impacts us, right? And he said, do you want to fix everything before you release, or we have more an iterative process? These are larger decisions that we have to take, so also that people can see the progress that we are, or things we are doing. So yeah, it's a complicated question. I think, like, on specific stuff, there is also a lot of coordination between teams, and there are things that, for example, a lot, like, what I'm always joking about is that if people perceive it's an AI bug, then it's our responsibility 100%, right, to make sure that that one is fixed. The reality is that sometimes, you have dependencies that you need to sort out to get some stuff also resolved. But this is why I think I like AI so much, is that because I really like to have also this overview of things that, end up being AI, and yeah, I know, again, I'm the first one that is not, it's definitely not at the point where I'm yet proud of what we have there, right? But I'm proud of what we are doing, and I know that what we are doing is the right thing, the right direction. And I hope, of course, that my goal is to make people experience it as soon as possible, right? These type of things.
Yeah, I I I suffer from catchphrase syndrome. I have certain sayings I really like. The only constant in game development being change. Probably my favorite. My second favorite, but I don't use it very often. Is it's the last 90%. The last 10% that takes 90% of the time. You said
Yeah.
You said 20% that takes 80% of the
takes
time.
80%,
There's always a
yeah.
variation, but
Yeah.
it's still a very famous phrase throughout all game development. It's like, yeah, it's that last part that takes most of the part. You also said something about how it can get easier when you make sequels and whatnot. I don't want to throw any shade out there to, or give validation to internet rumors, because internet rumors are worth every cent you pay for them, which is nothing. But the numbers that we're hearing out there for like Grand Theft Auto 6, for the time that's been in the money, it's like I the specifics aren't important. The message is that this process is hard, even when you're doing the sixth mainline iteration of a game, which is actually like the 9th or 10th in your entire in your entire franchise, and the company's existed for 20-30 years at this point. It's just, there's no part of this. If you're trying to do something that nobody's ever done before, there is no instruction manual. There is no time estimate that makes any sense.
Sometimes I think, like, even with the best intention, sometimes you might take a wrong direction, right? And you need to also not be afraid of accepting that, because otherwise you never move forward. If you're like, there is this sentence I think that we got in our package, welcome to the office page, that it was like, to not be afraid of making mistakes, because if you are afraid of making mistakes, you don't do anything in life, right?
I think if we're being completely honest with everybody, and I'm not saying we as in CG, I mean all people who make all video games. If we're being honest, there's a reason it's called game development and not game construction, and that's because most of it is mistakes. Most of it is trying a thing and going, no, that didn't work. Trying a thing and going, no, that didn't work. Some of them are big and famous, like hover mode and stuff like that. But most of the ones you never even see. Most of the ones are just, that's the stuff that's behind. We'd have to do a 24-hour news channel in order to cover most of it. That is a natural part of game development, and it's we try to show as much of that as possible, expose as much of that as possible, without undermining confidence in the thing.
But even a lot of other industries do that, and you just don't see it, right? I think there is a lot of failures in, I don't know, drug research, right, for medical, things, and there is a lot of failures in, I don't know, engineering, like spaceship engineering research, right? It's not that they get it right always the first time. Look at. So it's just like normal, and I think for us it's just very visible. That is really cool, I think, for people that that are interested even in that.
So we're just about out of time now, Fran. I think we've had a really nice, a really honest, a really open conversation. It's the kinds I really enjoy, and this place lets me get away with it because I love where I work. But that said, give folks some hope here. I'm not saying this is, don't give them a date. Don't say like this is going to be this or whatever. Don't this. But I know you well enough to know that you're hopeful for the future, that you have a positive outlook on things. Share some of that with us. Why should we be looking forward to the future of Star Citizen? From your perspective.
I think the experience of Star Citizen would be very unique. Not just on the AI side, but on all the systems, right? I think like it's Star Citizen and Squadron 42 in general, right? They would be a really, this is why I'm here, like, because my take on the company and on the project is that those projects will be, fantastic, to play. And not only fantastic, but they will give you some experiences that you will not be able to experience somewhere else. Again, fantastic doesn't necessarily mean perfect. Perfection doesn't exist, but it means that for a lot of people, this would be unique experience. When you play the game, it would be similar. For me, the goal is to have the similar experience that when I was a child, I was playing games, right? That it was like, I'm in a different place. I just feel inside me these type of things, and we have a lot of things in the pipeline already that will be released, slowly into view from the work we're doing. It doesn't have to wait like all this, that finished, but we are already in the process to in the next updates there will be more and more of the stuff we are working on, and hopefully we will do some other shows where we can go more in details. But it's not that it the good thing here for us is that it's never like all or nothing. It's gonna be a very, you get this one, you get this one, you get this one, right? Slowly while we do it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of
That's
things coming.
hopefully we'll do a show. That's the thing for friend. There's always
A
another show.
show. It's good.
There's always the week and then the week after and the week after, and if we don't fit you in this week, we'll get you next week or the week after that or the week after
Absolutely.
that. This is definitely a marathon, not a sprint and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So, all right, thank you so much for taking the time out of the end of your week here to chat with us, to hang out with us. Folks watching at home, this is the end of the quarter. It's the end of our quarter 3 for Star Citizen, the summer quarter for our video content. We're taking our little break now. We've got CitizenCon coming next week, which is on October 8th at 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. UTC. That's gonna kick off our new quarter 4 of content, and the journey to 4.0 and a whole host of other things you're gonna have to tune in to find out. Remember, it's a smaller show this year. There's no big keynote demo or anything, with the focus on 318 and getting persistent entity streaming as this new foundation for everything in the persistent universe, plus moving two major offices at the same time. The responsible thing was to scope down CitizenCon a bit this year. So remember that and when setting your expectations properly. That said, I am not one prone to hype. There's some of the stuff in my 8 years here, there's some of the most exciting developments that have come to the persistent universe yet in next week's show. So it's not going to be one you want to miss. Check it out. CitizenCon, October 8th, 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. UTC. If I'm saying it, you can take it to the bank. Check it out. Yeah, that's it. I forgot how to end the show. I got so caught up in the CitizenCon stuff, I forgot how to end the show. What do I usually say? I don't have an. We're just gonna hit the thing and just turn it to black. We'll just turn it to black. Just pretend the show ended, and that I said something really slick to end the show. That was really good. Yeah. The what did we learn this week? That's for the other show. I don't have a sign off for this one. Maybe I need one. We're out.